The warning lights started flashing red across the Zephyrian Defense Council's main control room. Lieutenant Yuna was the first to notice something wrong on her screen. She had been monitoring the outer edge of their territory for months, and nothing ever happened there. But today was different. "Commander Kral, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with worry. Kral walked over to her station, expecting to see another false alarm. Maybe a space rock or some cosmic dust playing tricks on their sensors. But what he saw made his blood run cold. There was a ship out there, moving slowly but steadily toward their most secret base. "That's impossible," he whispered, leaning closer to the screen. "Our stealth barriers should make us invisible to everyone." The ship was still too far away to get a clear reading, but their computers were working hard to figure out what it was. Kral watched the screen, hoping it would turn out to be one of their own vessels returning from a mission. Maybe someone forgot to send the proper codes. Then the computer finished its analysis, and the results appeared on the screen. The ship's origin showed just one word: Terran. Humans. Kral couldn't believe it. How did they find us? The Kronos Nebula had been their hiding place for over 300 years. It was surrounded by dangerous space storms and radiation that would destroy most ships before they could get close. Even their own people needed special equipment to travel through it safely. The location was known only to the highest-ranking military officials in the galaxy. Other officers started gathering around Yuna's station as word spread quickly through the control room. Everyone wanted to see the impossible sight for themselves: a human ship, somehow making its way through their most secure defenses like they were nothing. "Sir, should we send out a warning?" asked Officer Do-hyun from the communications desk. Kral was still trying to process what he was seeing. Humans had only learned to travel faster than light about 50 years ago. They were still considered newcomers to space travel by most galactic standards. Their technology was basic compared to what the advanced civilizations had developed over thousands of years. Yet here they were, somehow sneaking past defense systems that had stopped the greatest military minds in the galaxy. Systems that had been designed by the smartest engineers from dozens of different worlds, systems that had never failed before. "How long until they reach us?" Kral asked, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. Yuna checked her calculations twice before answering. "At their current speed, about 6 hours, sir." 6 hours. That wasn't much time to figure out how to respond to something that shouldn't be possible. Kral knew he had to alert the higher command immediately. This wasn't just about one human ship anymore. If they could find this place, what else might they know? The alarms were getting louder now, and more people were rushing into the control room. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. Kral took one last look at the screen, watching the small dot that represented the human ship moving steadily toward them through space that should have been impossible to navigate. Everything was about to change. Admiral Vorth was sitting in his office going over routine reports about ship movements across the galaxy. It was supposed to be a quiet day. He had a cup of hot tea steaming on his desk and was looking forward to finishing his paperwork early for once. Then his emergency communication device started screaming. The high-pitched alarm made him jump, spilling tea across his papers. In his 40 years of military service, that alarm had only gone off 3 times, and each time meant something terrible was happening. "Admiral, we have a code black situation," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant Mira. Her voice was shaking. "You need to get to the command center immediately." Vorth ran through the hallways, his mind racing. A code black meant their most protected military secrets were under direct threat. As he burst through the doors of the main command center, dozens of officers turned to look at him with worried faces. "Talk to me," he said, trying to catch his breath. "Sir, we just received word from the Kronos station," said Captain Jinwoo, his chief of operations. "Her human ship is heading straight for them. They'll be there in 6 hours. "One ship?" Vorth asked. "What kind of threat could one ship possibly pose?" "That's just it, sir. We don't know how they found the station in the first place. If they know about Kronos, what else might they know about our operations?" The room fell silent as everyone realized what this could mean. The Kronos station wasn't just any military base. It was where they planned their most important operations, stored their most advanced weapons, and kept their most classified information. If the humans had found it, They might know about things that could change the balance of power in the sea. Entire galaxy. Activate all emergency protocols, Vorth ordered. I want every available ship moving toward Kronos immediately. The command center exploded into activity. Officers started making calls to fleet commanders across 17 different star systems. Within minutes, 3 of their most powerful battle fleets were changing course, abandoning their previous missions to race toward the hidden station. Lieutenant Seo-hyun at the fighter command station reported that elite squadrons were launching from their carrier groups. These weren't ordinary pilots. They were the best of the best, trained for the most dangerous missions. If one human ship could somehow threaten their most secure facility, they weren't taking any chances. "Sir," called out Technical Officer Hanul from the Weapons Control Center, "should we power up the Void Cannons?" Vorth hesitated. The Void Cannons were their newest and most powerful weapons. They had been installed around the Kronos station 2 years ago, but had never been used in actual combat. Each cannon could destroy an entire fleet with one shot, but they consumed enormous amounts of energy and took hours to fully charge. "Do it," he decided. "Power them up to full capacity." As the massive weapons began their charging sequence for the first time since installation, Vorth stared at the main display screen showing the position of the human ship. Just one small vessel, moving steadily through space, had managed to set in motion the largest military response in galactic history. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Either way, they were about to face the full might of the most powerful military alliance the galaxy had ever known. Captain Ji-won walked slowly across the bridge of the UES Resilience, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. Outside the large windows, space looked peaceful and quiet, with distant stars twinkling like tiny diamonds. But she knew that looks could be deceiving. Somewhere out there, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was preparing to destroy her ship. "Status report," she said, her voice calm and steady. Tactical Officer Hanul looked up from his console. "We're still on course, Captain. Speed holding steady. No changes to our flight path." Ji-won nodded and moved to the next station. Communications Officer Minho was listening carefully to his headset, monitoring all the radio chatter from the alien fleets. His face was serious but not scared. "What are they saying out there?" Ji-won asked. "Lots of military talk, Captain. They're moving ships from all over the galaxy. Sounds like they're taking this pretty seriously." Minho adjusted his headset and continued listening. "I'm counting at least 3 major battle groups heading our way." Ji-won looked around at her crew. There were only 12 people on the bridge, and maybe 30 more throughout the rest of the ship. 42 humans total, facing off against thousands of alien warships with weapons that could turn their vessel into space dust in seconds. The strange thing was, nobody looked worried. Engineer Yuna was checking her systems with the same careful attention she showed during routine maintenance. Navigator Dohyun was plotting their course like they were heading to a peaceful meeting instead of what might be their final destination. "Captain," said Security Chief Nari, walking over from her station, "the crew is asking if you want to make an announcement. You know, tell everyone what we're really up against out there." Ji-won thought about it for a moment. Her crew deserved to know the truth about their situation. They were flying into the heart of enemy territory with no backup, no escape plan, and almost no chance of making it home alive. "Put me on ship-wide communication," she decided. Minho nodded and pressed a few buttons. "You're live, Captain." Ji-won picked up the microphone and spoke to her entire crew. "This is Captain Ji-won. I want everyone to know exactly where we stand right now. We're outnumbered by about 1,000 to 1. The ships coming after us have technology that's hundreds of years more advanced than anything we've got. By all logical thinking, we shouldn't have a chance." She paused, looking out at the stars again. "But we're not here because it's logical. We're here because it's right. Earth is counting on us to deliver a message that could save our entire planet. Every person back home, your families, your friends, everyone you've ever cared about, they're depending on what we do in the next few hours." The bridge was completely quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. "I won't lie to you," Ji-won continued. "This mission was always meant to be one way. We all knew that when we volunteered. But sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks that seem impossible. That's what makes us human." She set down the microphone and looked at her crew. Every face showed the same expression, determination mixed with quiet courage. They understood the odds, but they were ready to face them anyway. That's what the aliens didn't understand about humans. They could calculate firepower and count ships, but they couldn't measure the power of people who refused to give up. The first wave of alien fighters came screaming through space like angry hornets. Squadron leader Zexkai had been flying combat missions for 20 years, and he'd never seen anything like the human ship that was now in his targeting sights. "All units, open fire," he commanded into his radio. 12 interceptor ships unleashed their plasma weapons at the same time. The energy beams were so powerful they could melt through solid rock or turn an asteroid into dust in seconds. Zexkai watched his targeting computer lock onto the human vessel, and he was sure this would be over quickly. But something impossible happened. The human ship seemed to dance through the deadly light show like it was nothing more than a gentle rain. The plasma beams that should have torn it apart were somehow missing their target, even though the computer said they were hitting directly. "What's happening?" radioed Lieutenant Kor from the second fighter group. "My shots are going right through them." Zexkai checked his instruments twice. According to everything he could see, his weapons were hitting the human ship perfectly. But the vessel kept flying forward without even a scratch on its hull. Back on Admiral Vorth's command ship, the bridge crew was watching the battle in stunned silence. Technical Officer Hanul was running every scan he could think of, trying to understand what they were seeing. "Sir, their shielding technology is unlike anything in our databases," he reported. "It's not just blocking our weapons. It's somehow making them miss entirely." Admiral Vorth moved closer to the main display screen. The human ship looked small and fragile compared to the massive interceptors surrounding it, but it was moving through their attack formation like it belonged there. "Send in the second wave," he ordered. More fighter squadrons arrived, adding their firepower to the attack. Now there were 30 alien ships firing at one human vessel. The space around the UES Resilience lit up like a deadly fireworks display, but the ship continued on its path without changing speed or direction. On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain G1 was watching her defensive systems work perfectly. The adaptive shielding that Earth scientists had developed wasn't like the heavy armor that most galactic ships used. Instead, it bent light and energy around their vessel, making targeting computers think they were shooting at empty space. "How are our power levels?" she asked Engineer Yuna. "Holding steady, Captain. The shielding is working exactly like it should." Pilot Seojun was at the controls, keeping their course straight and true. "They're getting frustrated out there. I can see them changing formation, trying different attack angles." "Let them," G1 said calmly. "We're not here to fight them. We just need to get where we're going." Admiral Vorth was starting to feel a cold fear in his stomach. This wasn't how space battles were supposed to work. Superior numbers and firepower should always win, but the humans were proving that old rule wrong. "Sir," said Communications Officer Mira, "should we bring in the heavy cruisers?" Vorth stared at the display screen. The human ship was still hours away from the Kronos station, but it was getting closer with every minute. Nothing they had thrown at it had even slowed it down. This wasn't a desperate suicide attack by a doomed species. This was something much more frightening. It was a demonstration. The humans were showing the entire galaxy that their supposedly primitive technology could make the most advanced military force look helpless. And if they could do this, what else were they capable of? The UES Resilience had been flying at full speed for hours, dodging plasma fire and energy beams like they were raindrops. Then, without any warning, the ship suddenly began to slow down. "What are they doing?" Admiral Vorth asked, staring at his tactical display in confusion. Communications Officer Mira was the first to notice the incoming signal. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. It's coming through on all frequencies. Military, civilian, emergency channels, everything." "Put it on the main screen," Vorth ordered. The bridge fell completely silent as a woman's face appeared on their display. She looked to be in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back and calm, intelligent eyes. She was wearing a simple blue uniform with captain's stripes on her shoulders. "This is Captain G1 of the United Earthship Resilience," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I am requesting immediate communication with the commander of the Kronos station. We need to talk." Admiral Vorth couldn't believe what he was hearing. This human woman had just flown through the most dangerous space in the galaxy, survived attacks from dozens of his best fighter pilots, and now she wanted to have a conversation. "I am Admiral Vorth of the Galactic Defense Force," he replied, his voice broadcasting back to the human ship. "You are in restricted space and have ignored multiple warnings. Surrender immediately or we will destroy your vessel." Captain Jiwon's expression didn't change at all. She could have been discussing the weather instead of facing certain death. "Admiral, I understand your position, but surrender is not an option. Earth has obtained evidence of a planned genocide against humanity. We need to discuss this situation before it gets out of hand." The word genocide sent a chill through the alien bridge crew. Several officers looked at each other nervously. How could the humans possibly know about Operation Purge? That information was classified at the highest levels. "I don't know what you're talking about," Admiral Vorth said, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. "I think you do," Jiwon replied calmly. "We have documents, communication records, and tactical plans. Everything is prepared for broadcast across the galaxy if necessary, but we'd prefer to handle this diplomatically." Technical Officer Hanul was scanning the human ship with every sensor they had. "Sir, their weapon systems are completely powered down. They're not even running their targeting computers." This made the situation even more strange. The human ship was sitting in the middle of the largest military formation in galactic history. There were enough weapons pointed at them to destroy a small moon, and yet they had turned off all their defenses, except for the mysterious shielding that had been protecting them. On the Resilience, Communications Officer Minho was monitoring all the alien radio chatter. "Captain, they're really confused out there. Half of them are arguing about whether to shoot us, and the other half want to know how we found out about their secret plans." Captain Jiwon nodded. "That's what we expected. Fear makes people make bad decisions, but curiosity makes them listen." She turned back to the communication channel that was still connecting her to Admiral Vorth. "Admiral, I know this seems impossible. A single human ship alone in enemy territory, making demands instead of running away. But sometimes impossible things happen when people are fighting for their survival." She paused, letting her words sink in. "My crew and I didn't come here to start a war. We came here to prevent one. Earth knows about the plans to eliminate humanity, and we have proof. The question is, do you want to discuss this like civilized beings, or do you want the entire galaxy to learn about it when we broadcast everything we know?" Admiral Vorth stared at the screen, realizing that everything had just changed. This wasn't a military engagement anymore. It was a negotiation, and somehow the humans had managed to gain the upper hand without firing a single shot. Commander Kral stood at the viewing window of the Kronos station, watching the human ship slowly approach the docking bay. His hands were shaking slightly, and he couldn't stop them. In 300 years, no outsider had ever set foot on this station. Now he was about to welcome 3 humans who somehow knew their deepest secrets. "Sir, are you sure about this?" asked Lieutenant Yuna, standing beside him. "We could still destroy their ship before they dock." Kral shook his head. "It's too late for that. If what they're saying is true, they've already prepared to send out information that could destroy everything we've worked for." The UES Resilience moved into the docking bay with surprising gentleness. The human pilot clearly knew exactly what they were doing, despite never having seen alien technology before. The docking clamps locked into place with a soft metallic sound that echoed through the station. 20 minutes later, the airlock doors opened. Captain Jiwon stepped through first, wearing the same calm expression she'd shown during their video. Communication. Behind her came a man in an engineer's uniform. That would be Seojun, according to their files. The third person was a woman with alert eyes who moved like a trained soldier. Security Chief Nari, Kral assumed. "Commander Kral," Jiwon said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Kral hesitated for a moment, then shook her hand. Her grip was firm but not aggressive. "Captain Jiwon, I have to admit, this is not how I expected my day to go." "I imagine not," Jiwon replied, with what might have been a small smile. "May we sit down? We have quite a bit to discuss." They moved to the station's main conference room, a large space with a round table that could seat representatives from dozens of different species. Today, it held only 6 people, 3 humans and 3 aliens. Jiwon opened a small device that projected a holographic display above the table. Document after document appeared in the air, showing detailed military plans, communication records, and strategic assessments. "This is Operation Purge," she said simply. Commander Kral felt his blood turn to ice as he read the documents floating in front of him. They were real, completely authentic military files that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. The plan was laid out in horrible detail. First, humanity would be cut off from all trade and communication with other species. Then, their colonies would be destroyed one by one. Finally, Earth itself would be attacked, and the human species would be eliminated entirely. "How did you get these?" Kral whispered. Engineer Seojun spoke for the first time. "That's not really important right now. What matters is what we're going to do about it." Security Chief Nari was watching the alien officers carefully, reading their body language. "You look surprised, Commander. Does that mean you didn't know about this plan, or you didn't know we knew about it?" Kral couldn't answer immediately. He was still staring at the documents, seeing his own military's seal on orders that called for the complete destruction of an entire species. "The plan exists," he finally admitted, "but it was never supposed to be implemented. It was just a contingency, a worst-case scenario." Captain Jiwon leaned forward. "Commander, with respect, when someone plans your complete extinction down to the smallest detail, it doesn't matter whether they call it a contingency or not. What matters is that the plan exists at all." She gestured to the holographic display. "Everything you see here is ready to be broadcast across the galaxy within the next 6 hours. Every species, every government, every news organization will receive copies of these documents." The threat was clear, but Jiwon's voice remained calm and reasonable. "Earth's position is simple. We want to live in peace with the galactic community. But if that community is planning to destroy us, then we need everyone to know about it. Let them decide whether genocide is something they want to support." Commander Kral realized that the humans had put them in an impossible position. If these documents became public, the political damage would be enormous. But if they gave in to human demands, it would look like the mighty Galactic Defense Force had been defeated by a single ship. Either way, everything was about to change. The emergency meeting had been going on for 3 hours, and voices were getting louder with every passing minute. The conference room aboard Admiral Vorth's flagship was packed with military leaders from 12 different species, all talking at once, and none of them agreeing on anything. "This is a disaster," shouted General Thexmore, his scales turning dark, red with anger. "How did a primitive species get access to our most classified information?" Admiral Vorth sat at the head of the table, looking older than he had that morning. "The how doesn't matter right now. What matters is what we do next." Ambassador Veltara from the Centauri Republic stood up, her forearms gesturing wildly. "What we do next? Admiral, you just admitted that we've been planning to commit genocide. Do you understand what this means for our reputation across the galaxy?" "It was a contingency plan," Vorth repeated for the 10th time. "Every military organization has contingency plans. It doesn't mean we were actually going to use it." "Tell that to the humans," Ambassador Veltara shot back. "Tell that to every other species who's going to see these documents and wonder if we have similar plans for them too." At the far end of the table, Representative Korth from the mining guilds was studying his datapad with a worried expression. "I've been looking at our intelligence reports about humanity over the past few years. Half of what we thought we knew about them appears to be wrong." This got everyone's attention. The room fell quiet as they waited for him to continue. "Our report said humans were technologically backward, politically divided, and posed no real threat to galactic security," Korth continued. "But look what they've accomplished. They found our most secret military base, penetrated our best defenses, and obtained classified documents that should have been impossible to access." Commander Kral's voice came through the communication system from the Kronos station. "Representatives, I'm sitting here looking at 3 humans who walked into our most secure facility like they owned the place. They're not acting like a desperate species making a last stand. They're acting like they're in complete control of this situation. General Thexmore slammed his fist on the table. "They're bluffing. It has to be a bluff. One ship, 3 people. How much of a threat could they possibly be?" "That's exactly what we said 6 hours ago," Admiral Vorth replied quietly. "And yet here we are." Ambassador Veltara was reading something on her personal communication device. "I'm getting reports from my government. Other species are starting to ask questions about human capabilities. The Andromedans want to know why we never told them about Operation Purge. The Vegan Confederacy is demanding an explanation for why we classified humanity as a threat in the first place." Representative Korth looked up from his datapad again. "There's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations are reporting unusual activity in several star systems, ships that don't match any known configurations, but the energy signatures are similar to the vessel currently docked at Kronos." The room went completely silent. "You're saying there are more human ships out there?" General Thexmore asked, his voice much quieter than before. "I'm saying we may have seriously underestimated what we're dealing with," Korth replied. Back on the Kronos station, Commander Kral was watching Captain Jiwon and her team wait patiently in the conference room. They didn't look worried or anxious. They looked like people who knew exactly how this was going to end. Lieutenant Yuna approached him with a concerned expression. "Sir, I'm monitoring their communications with Earth. They're not asking for help or reporting on their situation. They're just sending routine status updates, like this is all going according to plan." Commander Kral felt a chill run down his spine. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them militarily, they'd outmaneuvered them politically too. While the Galactic Defense Force leadership argued among themselves, the humans were sitting calmly in their most secure facility, holding all the cards. For the first time in his career, Kral was beginning to wonder if his side was going to lose. "Captain." Jiwon sat perfectly still in the conference room, her hands folded on the table in front of her. She had been waiting for 4 hours now, and she looked as calm and relaxed as someone sitting in a peaceful garden. This was starting to make Commander Kral more nervous than any weapon could have. "Captain," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "aren't you concerned about what's happening with your ship? You're completely surrounded by our fleet." Jiwon looked at him with those same intelligent eyes that had appeared on screens throughout the galaxy earlier that day. "Commander, if I was worried about my ship, do you think I would have come here in the first place?" Before Kral could answer, Lieutenant Yuna burst into the room, her face pale with shock. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." She activated the room's main display screen, and suddenly the conference table was surrounded by star maps showing military installations across the galaxy. Red dots were appearing on the maps, one after another, like lights being turned on in a dark house. "What am I looking at?" Kral asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "Human ships, sir. They're appearing near our major bases throughout the galaxy. 12 confirmed sightings so far, and more reports are coming in every few minutes." Engineer Seo Jun spoke up for the first time in hours. "You didn't think we came here alone, did you?" Security Chief Nari was watching the alien officer's reactions carefully. "The interesting thing is, none of our ships are doing anything aggressive. They're just there, waiting." Commander Kral stared at the display in disbelief. Human. Vessels were positioned near some of the most important military facilities in galactic space. How had they gotten there without being detected? How long had they been planning this? From Admiral Vorth's flagship, urgent communications were flooding in. The reports all sounded the same. Human ships appearing out of nowhere, taking up positions near critical installations, then simply waiting. "Sir," came the voice of Communications Officer Mira over the intercom, "the Andromeda Station is reporting a human vessel holding position just outside their defensive perimeter. The ship isn't responding to warnings, but it's not making any aggressive moves either." Similar reports were coming from the Vega shipyards, the Centauri research facility, and the main fleet depot at Rigel. Everywhere the Galactic Defense Force had important assets, humans had somehow positioned themselves. Nearby, Captain Jiwon finally broke her silence. "This is what I've been trying to explain to you, Commander. Earth didn't send one desperate ship on a suicide mission. We sent a diplomatic mission backed by the clear demonstration that we can reach any target we choose." She gestured to the star map still floating above the table. Every one of those ships could have attacked the installations they're near. Instead, they're sitting quietly, waiting for the results of our conversation. Commander Kral felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. This is impossible. Our intelligence report said humans barely had the technology for basic space travel. Your intelligence reports were wrong about a lot of things, Security Chief Nari said with a slight smile. That's what happens when you underestimate people who are fighting for their survival. Back on Admiral Vorth's flagship, the emergency meeting had dissolved into chaos. Species representatives were demanding explanations, military commanders were arguing about response strategies, and everyone was asking the same question: how had they so completely misjudged human capabilities? Representative Korth was studying the deployment patterns of the human ships. Look at these positions, they're not random. Each ship is positioned to monitor our most critical operations. This isn't just a show of force, it's intelligence gathering on a massive scale. The realization hit everyone at the same time. The humans weren't just demonstrating that they could threaten galactic military assets. They were showing that they already knew where everything important was located. Captain G1's voice came through the communication system from the Kronos station, addressing the entire fleet. Gentlemen, Earth doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We just want to live in it. But we won't be exterminated quietly, and we won't be treated as inferior beings by people who clearly don't understand what they're dealing with. For the first time in galactic history, humans had forced the most powerful military alliance in the known universe to sit down and listen. 3 days had passed since Captain G1 first walked into the Kronos station, and the galaxy felt like a completely different place. The emergency meetings had finally ended, the shouting had stopped, and now representatives from dozens of worlds were gathering aboard the UES Resilience for something that had never happened before: a treaty signing on a human vessel. Commander. Kral stood in the docking bay, watching as diplomats and military leaders from across the galaxy made their way onto the human ship. Some looked curious, others seemed nervous, but all of them understood they were witnessing history being made. "I still can't believe this is actually happening," Lieutenant Yuna said, standing beside him. "Neither can I," Kral admitted. 3 days ago, we were preparing to destroy them. Now we're signing peace treaties on their ship. The main conference room of the Resilience had been transformed for the occasion. Captain G1 had insisted on keeping things simple, no fancy decorations or elaborate ceremonies, just a table, some chairs and the documents that would change everything. Admiral Vorth was the first to arrive, looking tired but relieved. The past 3 days had been the most stressful of his entire career, but at least now there was a path forward that didn't involve war. "Captain G1," he said, shaking her hand. "I have to admit, when this all started, I never imagined we'd be meeting like this. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones nobody sees coming," G1 replied with a smile. Representative Korth from the mining guilds was studying the treaty documents with the careful attention of someone who had spent decades negotiating trade agreements. "These terms are actually quite reasonable," he said, sounding surprised. "Full membership in the Galactic Defense Force, equal representation in military planning, access to advanced technologies, but also full responsibilities for peacekeeping and defense." Ambassador Veltara nodded in agreement. "What I find most impressive is what's not in here. No territorial demands, no requests for war reparations, no insistence on special privileges. Earth simply wants to be treated as an equal partner." The signing ceremony itself took less than an hour. One by one, representatives from major galactic powers added their signatures to the Kronos Accords. Operation Purge was officially disbanded, and all records of it were to be destroyed. Humanity would become the newest member of the Galactic Defense Force, with full voting rights and military integration. When it was over, Captain G1 stood up and addressed the room. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, I want to thank everyone for choosing cooperation over conflict. We look forward to working together to keep the galaxy safe and peaceful." The diplomats began filing out, many of them still shaking their heads in amazement at how quickly everything had changed. Soon only the core negotiating teams remained. Engineer Seogen was packing up the human delegation's equipment, with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown throughout the entire crisis. "So what happens now, Captain?" "Now we go home," Jiwon said, simply. "Earth needs to know that we're safe, and we have a lot of work to do to prepare for our new role in galactic affairs." Security Chief Nari was monitoring the alien ships that were still positioned around the Resilience. "They're pulling back to standard diplomatic distances. I think they're finally starting to trust us." As the human ship prepared to depart, Commander Kral watched from the observation deck of the Kronos station. The vessel that had caused so much chaos was leaving as quietly as it had arrived, with no fanfare or celebration. "What did we learn from all this?" Lieutenant Yuna asked. Kral thought about it for a long moment. "We learned that courage can be more powerful than weapons. Those humans could have started a war that would have destroyed millions of lives. Instead, they chose to risk everything on the chance that reason and justice would win." The UES Resilience disappeared into the depths of space, carrying with it the promise of a new era. The galaxy's most powerful military alliance had been challenged by a species they had dismissed as primitive, and in the end, both sides had emerged stronger. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through the simple act of refusing to be silent in the face of injustice.